Morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this special show today on the 26th day of June 2023. Hey, it's 17 degrees. It's sunny right here in Brisbane. It's just a beautiful day. A little bit of smoke about, but not cloudy. So let's get on with the news for today. Well, figures are showing that enough houses are being built amid the shortage concerns. And that is the problem. Whenever there is some problem that arises, people don't realize there are things still being done, which is yet to come to the fair, and they start doing other things and taking advantages. And then all of a sudden they find out that there's an oversupply, an overflow. Then people, rather than just jumping to every little thing that happens, take a look at what is being done. Yes, okay, right at this point in time, there is a shortage, but what's actually happening? What's being built and what is going to be made available rather than just starting to make more available by other means. So here's that report.
There are two types of shortages in housing. First, there's the shortage of existing dwellings being put on the market, that is, new listings. And that dropped this year is the reason house prices stopped falling and started rising again. And then there's the shortage of new houses being built versus population growth. And despite all the warnings about that, I don't think it's going to be a problem. Real estate website Domain has produced a forecast of dwellings needed based on official forecasts of population growth divided by 2.48, which is the current number of people per dwelling. The Bureau of Statistics doesn't tell us the number of dwellings completed each year, just commencements and approvals. But let's assume the houses started in 2021 were finished in 2022. There were more than 230,000 commencements in 2021. That's 3 times what was needed in 2022. Last year there were more than 180,000 commencements, which would also be more than enough for this year. Last year's 190,000 approvals should be finished next year, so that'll be enough as well. And approvals this year are running at 12,000 a month, or an annual rate of 144,000 a year, which is also enough. They may not be built in convenient places, which is the argument about the need for more medium density housing close to the city, but that's another story. And meanwhile, the shortage of new listings of existing houses could be solved this spring by mortgagees coming off fixed rates onto much higher variable rates. I mean, how many of those families will need to sell the house in order to stay afloat? But then again, an awful lot of people are working multiple jobs to keep the house. But really, all things considered, I reckon there's a fair chance that housing affordability will improve fairly soon.
So, ladies and gentlemen, I think that is a very good report presented there. And if you follow him, you know that he always puts on a wonderful, data-backed research and his reporting. So that's very good. Now, sad news, former Labor leader Simon Cream has died at age 74.
That's correct. It came as a shock yesterday afternoon when the news of Simon Crean's passing broke. He served almost 2 decades in the federal parliament and held a variety of different roles in that time, including, as you say, Labor leader between 2001 and 2003 and as a cabinet minister in several Labor governments. Now, after his passing, the Crean family have asked for privacy but released a statement to say that they are shocked at his passing and that they are devastated by his death. Tributes have also flown from across the political spectrum, including from the Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese, who said that he was a giant of the Labor movement and paved the way for a better, fairer country. Notably, in his political career, Mr Crean opposed opposed the invasion of Iraq in the early 2000s. And that's something the successor in his seat, the seat of Hotham, our now Home Affairs Minister Claire O'Neill, said was a defining moment in Mr Crean's political career. Tributes have also flown from the Leader of the Opposition, Peter Dutton, who said he only saw Mr Crean in Melbourne very recently and was shocked and saddened by his passing, as well as from several other former Prime Ministers, including Tony Abbott and Kevin Rudd.
Rather sad news. Indeed, he was one of the better politicians. If you have been following what he has been doing. Well, I think now, when we look at the housing crisis, and there's also the pet owners who are worried about, getting pets in these houses. But what about international, students? What's happening with their space?
Darwin resident Fleur Crow is getting ready to welcome an international student.
It's some income for me, which is good. It helps with some of the bills that I experience.
But more than that, she sees it as a way to help students as they, like so many others, face the tight rental market. She's also inspired by the friendships she made with international students while at university.
If I can contribute a little bit towards new students coming to Australia and that bond that they might form with their own friends here and Australian students at the university, I think that's incredible.
Founder of the Australian Homestay Network that pairs up hosts with international students says never before have they received so many applications.
Nationally, we normally would get about 500 host applications every month, but that's rising this year up to almost 1,000 most months on average.
He says it's tax-free income, but he'd like to see the government offer hosts further incentives. While it might not be a direct response, the interest comes after Reserve Bank Governor Philip Lowe last month called on Australians to increase the number of people in their households as a way to help the economy. But while host families are bridging an accommodation gap, some students say it's not a long-term solution.
Is it possible to make more accommodation for students on campus? It would be more great for the student as well.
Keen to live closer to facilities and where there's better security. Evelyn Manfield, ABC News, Darwin.
So there you go, what a turnaround of circumstances and rules. Previously, you were restricted to the number of people you could have in town, and you were actually charged if you had like a granny flat, or if you had someone living in, or if you rented out a room in your house. And now that is being encouraged. So it's a great turnaround, as I mentioned. And previously, when we first arrived here, lots around 405 square meters were illegal. You couldn't even get there unless you were very close or in a city. Then you'd get an approval for a block that size. Now that's become the norm because there's shortage of land as well. So there's a growing number of people living in cars amid housing crisis as well. Let's take a look at that.
Good boy. Good boy.
When Mandy Weber slides open this door for Diesel, she's bringing him home. After failing to make payments on her rented house, she's been living in this 2008 minivan since February.
People have actually said to me that this is the cream of the crop for living homeless.
In and around Geelong and the outskirts of Melbourne, Mandy is learning the rules of homeless van life.
The next left, then you will arrive at your destination.
You can't sort of get too comfortable laying down in the back of the day because people will approach your car, they will bang on the window.
For nearly a decade, Mandy has struggled to find stable housing. Last year, she told the ABC when she was forced to move to a new rental, she feared returning to homelessness. Now, she worries about where she and Diesel can safely spend the night.
Now I don't park in people's streets or built-up areas. You'd be there in the morning and they're bringing their kids to school or the playground and they'd say, oh, you can't sleep here, this is a residential area, you need to go outside of town.
Her best spots are off the radar.
You know, just somewhere out of the way where I'm not bothering people by living in the car. I'll just stick out of here, out of the way for a minute. Hang on.
Mandy knows despite appearances on days like these, this life is far from glamorous.
Some for me first, and some for you. I've got to be mindful of where I'm parking and where I'm going and what I'm doing, and petrol and money and food and being out of people's ways. Is there a rabbit? Yeah, it's not an ideal life to live at all. Come on, you stay there.
Mandy relies on nearly $1,100 a fortnight from the disability support pension. But after deductions for unpaid utility bills from her old property, traffic fines, her storage unit, and her mobile plan,
Let's go to bed.
the money goes fast.
Go over. Good boy.
This is what you have left now for 13 days.
Yes, yep. That's my 13 days to live off. That's it.
That's $109.
$109.54, yep. So I've got to really budget.
Out here, bedtime comes early. After some time on her devices, alone in a beachside parking lot, it's lights out. Mornings are simple. There's no money for breakfast and no stove for tea. Her first stop today is the food bank.
You start with your fruit and veg, and then once you've sort of got what you need there, then we'll head over to the freezer.
Okay.
Under the rules, visits here are limited. Mandy makes the most of it.
How much is this going to help you?
It's life-changing. This is about a week's worth, like 5 to 6 days worth of food. Thank you so much.
She doesn't want sympathy, just for the government or anyone to listen.
We just need affordable accommodation. It's not asking for much. It's asking for basics, affordable housing. You know, that's all it is.
She still attends open houses for rentals, but with no job and poor references, she can't compete. But she won't give up hope that someday soon, home won't be on four wheels. Norman Hermont, ABC.
So there you go, homes on four-wheeled, and many times people go on holidays, but doing it every day in and out, that is different. That is quite different to that. And unfortunate that she's got so many unpaid fines and unpaid utility bills that is coming off her Centrelink payment, and that leaves her very little to live by. All right, now let's go to the traditional owners in the Northern Territory, creating a map for their country by the effort to protect it from cotton farmings and mines.
This is coming from the Billabong, with fresh water to. You got songline, and now up down this way you got salt water. They got song too.
The traditional owners at Nooka were really worried about the water drying up and the fact that they might not have fresh water to drink in the future, and they asked me if they would work with me to create a songlines map outlining the cultural connection between fresh water and their songlines.
I'm very, very worried about that. Because that water, it's a life. It's a life to us.
Yeah, we made that map to visit Canberra and to show Canberra what we did about the water connection. The threats we're worrying about is like cotton will be coming in, and I think we'll have no water left.
For the Alua people, the springs and water holes of this region provide a vital source of bush tucker.
We got water mussels in the spring, we got lily seed, we got fish, turtle. So we are still fighting for water on fracking side and this side on cotton. And that we want to tell them to stop doing it and start listening to the rightful traditional owner.
So there we are, ladies and gentlemen, and isn't that so just wonderful to see that but the help that we have today in mapping and couple that with the traditional knowledge of the land can be put together to a very, very good use. Well, right now, before we head out to the news in brief for today, let's take a look at the rules that might be put in place for claiming your tax deductions as it's coming very close to tax time.
Let's make tax digestible on a Sunday morning, can we?
Sure.
Now, we know that the ATO is going to be cracking down on what I believe are 3 areas: rental property deductions, work-related expenses and CGT. What do people need to be mindful of when they're thinking, oh, should I or shouldn't I, when claiming?
Well, make sure it's real. For example, one factor with regards to the stay-at-home allowance, many people are working from home, and that rate of offset has been reduced significantly, and you can't just estimate anymore. You need to actually have records in hand. And also, particularly with regards to capital gains tax or property-related deductions, in particular interest deductions, you have to make sure that it's connected to a property that's related to actual income earning. And so under particular scrutiny, deductions connected to even your own home or investment property that you might be using as a holiday home as well. So you need to be careful of that. And the ATO this time is going to be, from now on, will be doing a lot more cross-checking with a number of financial institutions to ensure that the interest rate deduction is being claimed is fair.
It does seem to be a lot more stringent now. That's what the ATO says. I do wonder, as we gather our receipts and we look at what we've done over the last financial year, what's the best way to maximise our claims?
Well, first of all, it involves probably doing a bit more planning than doing things at 25 days before the end of the financial year. But certainly, right at this point in time, if there's any deductions or perhaps even charitable donations that are to be made, it's best to get on with them now. A popular one also, of course, is to top up on super contributions just before the year end, and in that regard, you have to make sure that the contribution hits your super fund before 30 June. And some super funds, for example, use BPay, or depending on your account, etc., and they can take a couple of days. So best to get onto those straight away.
Yeah. So at this late stage, delay any income and bring forward any deductions or charitable donations that you're just saying there. But let's take a step back. Let's take a step forward, actually. Let's say it's July 1 and you're looking about setting yourself up better for next financial year. What do you advise your clients? How do you best get yourself prepared to maximise these returns?
I suppose those who have the most variable income, where there's an opportunity for proper tax planning, involves small businesses and or circumstances where there's a level of change in the level of profitability or income. And in that regard, for small business owners, etc., I strongly suggest they gather all their information, have up-to-date information on their businesses, etc., and go and see a tax accountant probably around March, April, where you've got a good idea what your likely profit is to be in the year ahead and what opportunities are available to minimise tax in that regard.
You mentioned my favourite friend, tax accountant, which is what I tend to do, is gather all my receipts in a shoebox and then just push it on to my tax accountant. But the ATO is also cracking down on accountancy firms that may have done some dodgy deals in the last few years or so. How do you ensure that the accountant that you're with is above board?
Well, that's a really good question, and I haven't really thought about that too much before. But I'm actually really impressed by the ATO and how much record gathering they are doing. And often, for example, I really encourage people to use MyGov to understand the information that flows through there. I do my own tax return. I mean, I've got obviously some knowledge, and I hop on there, and I'm surprised to see that already my PAYG income is already in there and all the tax. And so it really comes down to... It's all pre-populated, yeah. So it just comes down to a fine-tuning exercise. Yeah. I suppose when one has to take a high-level consideration of the whole matter and consider that, is that expense purely for business or is it partly for private use? And therefore, you could say that, the accountant's pushing the envelope a bit too much if they're claiming the full deduction for the payment as opposed to an apportionment that's reasonable for work. And that there actually be some documentation. So you should be being asked questions to verify what you're looking to claim.
Yeah, so Faz, you might not be able to claim that trip to Fiji.
Oh,
yeah, sorry.
So there you are, ladies and gentlemen, up to date on Australian in Radio. Well, right now, let's do a little recap on all the top stories for today before we go to functions and events.
Former Labor leader Simon Crean has died suddenly at the age of 74. Mr Crean's family says he died after his morning exercise while in Berlin as part of an industry delegation. Former colleagues have paid tribute to Mr Crean as a giant of the Labor movement. There are still plenty of unanswered questions surrounding the weekend's aborted mutiny in Russia after Wagner mercenaries retreated from the southern city of Rostov. Fighters from the group have headed back to their bases in return for guarantees for their safety. Their commander, Yevgeny Prigozhin, will move to Belarus under a deal mediated by a Belarusian president. The US Secretary of State says the unprecedented challenge to Russian President Vladimir Putin has exposed fresh cracks in the strength of his leadership.
This is clearly, we see cracks emerging. Where they go, if anywhere, when they get there, very hard to say. I don't want to speculate on it, but I don't think we've seen the final act.
There are major transport disruptions in Melbourne this morning, with the western suburbs virtually cut off from the city because of rail and road closures. Work on the Westgate Tunnel project has shut down 3 train lines and a section of a major arterial road, Dynon Road, until July the 9th. The state government is warning of significant delays and urging residents in the western suburbs to consider working from home for the next 2 weeks.
So there you are, ladies and gentlemen, up to date on Australian Indian Radio. Hi, ladies and gentlemen, that's about all we have for you today. We'll bring or resume the functions and events tomorrow after we sort of update what's already taken place in the weekend. As we know, this was a mega weekend. There was just so much that was happening out there. And congratulations to GoPure Gold Coast on holding a wonderful event. It was very well done. So many good reviews. Everyone who attended are just full of praise. So well done, Pradeep Gorosia and his team, entire team, putting an event together of that magnitude at the SeaWorld Conference Centre. So until tomorrow, it's goodbye from us.